Can you tell us first of all about how the story came to fruition?
Well, this is a project of the African Oral History Archive. And the African Oral History Archive is about collecting real-life testimony of the stories of what made modern South Africa, what resulted in the transformation that is South Africa today. And the African Oral History Archive has collected archive material for a number of years of original testimony from the players who were on the stage at the time when the transformation happened in South Africa. And Plot for Peace is an incredible story, a hitherto unknown story that has emerged out of the work of the archive. And through the work that Mandy has been doing, we put together the concept and went out to go and make the movie.
How do you then begin to making a documentary? You know, what was the point where you said, okay, this is where we've got the start of a documentary to build a story around, really? Was there a particular piece of information that you thought, okay, this is what we need to structure?
So this incredible story emerged. A story that hadn't been told before, certainly that the public didn't know about. And I went to Mandy and I said, there's an incredible story here. There's an amazing individual that has hitherto been unknown that has a story to tell. Let's go and convince him to go and tell his story.
And I think out of the archives, what we did was we found the story about a prisoner exchange, and there was a man called Monsieur Jacques, and nobody had known about him. We searched archives, all the national archives, and found a little bit of footage where the newspaper reporter said Monsieur Jacques, and nobody had known about him. So for 30 years, this mysterious Frenchman, is it about 30 years, probably more, had sat on his story and had not told it to the world. So it was really through finding a character that provided the engine through which we could understand this history.
And then the amazing thing about this is one thing led to the next, which led to the next, and one story opened another story, which opened another story. But what was then amazing about this movie is we said, here is an opportunity to tell this piece of history from a global perspective. So let's not tell it the way South Africans tell their story, because South Africans tend to put their own flavor on the story, and that's when we went out and found Carlos.
Yeah.
And through a creative process that really was quite remarkable, we brought on board this very, very talented young director who had no connection with his history whatsoever. So it's one of the first times that we've really been able to take an amazing story and link it with a very, very talented international director and put together a global team to tell the story from a global perspective.
And I was going to say, yeah, it gives Carlos, you must bring then objectivity to the story, because it's not so personal to you.
Yeah, actually the first time they contacted me, first thing I told them is, are you aware that I'm not an expert in African history or politics or... And they said, yeah, that's just exactly what we're looking for.
Yeah, the minute he said that, we said, you're the man. You're in.
And the man that the story is based about, Ivor Ichikowitz. How did you first go about contacting him, and whether really you wanted to tell his story?
Well, I've worked in Africa all my life, and I have an amazing network of relationships that have been built up over many, many years of working in Africa, because that's what Africa's about. And as it happened, Jean-Yves was known to me. And I sat down with Jean-Yves and I said, we've discovered this incredible piece of history. We've discovered the role that you played as a catalyst in creating this amazing story. The world needs to hear about it. And his immediate reaction was, no.
No way.
I've no chance.
Pas du tout, en français.
I did what I did to achieve an outcome. The outcome has now been achieved, and nobody's going to be interested in the story anyway. It's history, it's gone. Yes. And I said to him, you owe it to future generations of Africans, future generations of young people around the world, to tell this amazing story, because it is an amazing story that isn't just about South Africa. And with Mandy's able assistance and a huge amount of persuasion, we eventually got Jean-Yves to bare his soul. And I think it was a very, very difficult thing for him to do. But that was actually, getting Jean-Yves on board was probably the easiest part of the process. Because then we had to get this whole team of other people to participate in telling the story. And a lot of these people were really not ready to go back into that history. It was a painful time in history, and a lot of people had kind of closed that book and put it away.
This is quite a sensitive subject, and I wonder where. And you're speaking to high-profile politicians. So, was it difficult? How do you contact these people and say, are you prepared to speak to us?
You run around the world many times over and over, because I think it's all about trust and credibility, and the integrity of the archive, African Oral History Archives, already had one or two relationships with some of them, and then you've got to go back, because the important point about South Africa's involvement in the Angolan War is that nobody wanted to talk about it. It kind of was our Vietnam in a way.
Absolutely, but it wasn't just our Vietnam. It was the Vietnam for a number of countries. It was a Vietnam for the Soviet Union. It was a Vietnam for Cuba.
I mean, Vietnam in the definition, we were there and we didn't know how to get out. It's not in terms of loss of lives. So it's probably a bit inaccurate to say Vietnam, but the point is, there's so many.
It was an embarrassment to all of these people, and as a result, it was a piece of history that people didn't really want to talk about. But what is amazing about how this network unfolded is that the movie is about one man's ability to take a whole lot of people who hated each other, a whole lot of people who didn't trust each other, a whole lot of people who really, really had no intention of coming to the table together and creating trust between them. And what was amazing is this was borne out by the fact that once the circle of trust was recreated, these people were prepared to talk about the process.
Like open to change.
And not everybody loved each other. I mean, the story unfolds to show that not everybody landed up huggy and lovey and all together in the picture, but they all realized that the outcome was good for everybody. And Jean-Yves Olivier's, I suppose his talent in this was to create the common thread that brought all these people together. And that's what the movie's about. It's about trust. And it's not just about that event. It's an illustration that it was successful 20 years ago in an almost impossible situation. Why can't it be successful today?
Actually, there was one of somebody said about a zebra, and you can shoot a zebra in the white area or the black area, but it still amounts to the same thing. The zebra will die, and I thought that was an amazing analogy, actually, wasn't it?
That statement was made by Pip Botha, who is really one of the serious unsung heroes of the struggle, because this was a white Afrikaner. He was part of the apartheid system, and he got it. He realized that based on that analogy, that there was a responsibility to save South Africa. It wasn't just a responsibility to save white interest and black interest.
The interesting thing that you mentioned as well was that it's obviously international. You've spoken to people around the world. So with regards to making the documentary, was that logistically difficult?
For Mandy to
How many ways do you skin a cat? Yeah, sure. I mean, we had resources, but I mean, you do everything with Carlos as well. You're trying your hardest to reach a lot of people and in a lot of different places. So it was a challenge.
And not only putting people together, but there was also an extra difficulty that we set up ourselves, which was we did not want to interview people that knew about the story, or experts, or historians, or journalists, or even high-profile politicians that knew about the story. We only wanted the people who were involved as actors in the story. So that was an extra difficulty, and we even cut out of the film some very interesting interviews done to high-profile politicians, because we realized they were not really part of the story.
The whole concept behind the Oral History Archive is to capture these stories for future generations, but from the mouths of the people that were present and on the stage at the time, through the stories of the actual decision makers. And this was, I mean, the integrity of this was very, very important. And what Carlos is saying is 100% correct, and it adds a huge layer of complexity to it, because we didn't want third-party testimony, we wanted first-hand testimony.
And personally, for all three of you, what have you taken away with you from making this film? Is there something, maybe the atrocities that you saw that were shocking, that you didn't expect, or was there something that was lovely, that you just thought, you know what, I didn't know that, and it makes me feel good that I've made this.
Well, let's start with Carlos, because he didn't have the background to the story. So I'd be very keen to hear what you took
for
away.
me it's been an amazing experience, not only because this is my first feature film as a director, but you know, if I think now of the day that they first contacted me and what I expected to learn from this experience and what I expected to live through with this experience, I couldn't imagine what it was going to be like. It's been 2 years of traveling around the world, talking to chief of staff of secret services from different countries, presidents, foreign affairs ministers, all the archive footage that I've looked at with many things that we even had to cut out because they were too
Gruesome.
yeah. So yeah, I couldn't enumerate all the things that I've learned.
Ivor, for you?
For me, this product is one step in a whole process that we're following in terms of trying to tell the story of Africa, the many stories. This is just one building block, a very important building block, but one building block in a whole host of stories that resulted in the liberation of South Africa. And I think that this movie for me is about humanity. It's about human beings. It's about how the world isn't made up of master kind of manipulators who have a master plan. It's made up of a whole host of people who have a role to play, and they can play that role at the point that they find trust between each other, and how sometimes a catalyst, as unlikely as that catalyst may be, can bring those people together to create an outcome. And I think that this film has huge importance to educate future generations of negotiators, and I think it's a very impressive and very important piece of work.
And Mandy, for you?
Well, I love the privilege of access. You know, it is such an amazing opportunity to be engaged. So you come out of those interviews on an absolute high because of this great privilege. And I think people enjoy telling their stories because there is something about how national identities get formed through many narratives. So I love that we can be part of contributing to the many narratives and not just saying that there's one truth.